So Neil, you're currently 6-1 with the green-white aura deck that I've been playing. Yeah, so with the only two people playing it, would you play it again? Will you need to? I mean, that's the question.
Hopefully I won't need to. I think I'm a lot for the top 8 with an ID.
You had the best breakers going.
Yeah. Well, as we discussed, it was like a bit of a window of opportunity deck. Yeah. You got a little unfortunate that somebody, for some unknown reason, had a boatload of sideboard against you. I haven't come across that, so I've been quite lucky.
I mean, what Neil's talking about now is what I touched upon earlier and what he's almost certainly talked about, which is the fact that we've essentially chosen a deck entirely to sort of ride a metagame that we've seen trending. For example, Neil and I both played the same 75-card Jund deck in Cheshire a couple of weeks ago, 2-3 weeks, just before Christmas. And we noticed the top 8 there was very, very skewed. So, and the green-white aura deck appears to be perfectly positioned to prey upon that. Have you been finding that's how it's going?
Yeah, like a lot of it. It's very good because obviously we play a lot of Magic Online, and that's where the deck sort of come from. I found out, did you know that it's essentially a port from a Jewels of the Planeswalker?
Yeah, I think Dave Sutcliffe was saying that earlier, wasn't he, about how he thinks that that's where it might have originated. It'd be quite interesting to find out if that's actually true. Yeah. I mean, it may well be.
Coming up with it independently. But yeah, it was very popular on Magic Online, which is where we saw it, obviously. Yeah. And then a lot of, like, England seems to be a little bit behind. I think Magic Online metagame.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the UK probably has a smaller percentage of its PTQ grinders playing Magic Online regularly. Yeah. So, for example, Jim, the guy that beat me on camera, the reason he had so much hate and the reason he had Back to Nature was because he plays a lot of Magic Online. I mean, he talks to him online a lot. So I think that you can see that it's trickled in, but it's just not widespread enough yet. I mean, a lot of people, would you say a lot of people today have considered what you're playing a bit of a joke deck?
Yes, definitely. There's been lots of humour as people stand and watch me, and then they'll come up and go, oh, how are you doing with your deck? And I'm like, 4-0, 5-0, and they're like, what? And it's just because they aren't aware that it's a genuine deck. And it's one of those things where, like I said, as soon as people start putting hate in for it, it gets a lot harder to win.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously there's some sideboard options you can play. I mean, for Back to Nature, there's things like Second Sunrise and Retether, but I'm not sure they're very good. I mean, we've said that we probably wouldn't play it again. Do you think there's a chance that people just won't adapt to it?
There definitely is a chance. Like I said, we're the only two people playing it, so...
Is the point you're trying to make, essentially, is it worth adapting to?
Yeah, is it worth adapting to? The only problem with that is the fact that we're quite high profile and people have followed us and been inquiring as to what we're doing, and like I said, there's been that lots of joviality as they've watched us play, and people have seen that what the deck can do, and that might be one of those, it might turn into one of those sort of decks that nobody plays but everybody hates, like you saw with Dredge a lot, where there'd be 3 people in the country that might play Dredge, but nobody wanted to lose to Dredge.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that you're playing the Bogle deck and I've been playing the Bogle deck today has definitely been a bit of a thing. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people are talking about it. I mean, we're doing this now. Would you say that a lot of your games have been close? I mean, the games that you were just playing on camera didn't seem especially close. They may have done to the untrained eye, but you were definitely ahead all of Game 2. I mean, I didn't see Game 1 myself.
Things in Game 1 he had very little he could do. And Game 2, I felt like I was ahead, but obviously I don't necessarily know what he's got in his sideboard. But in all likelihood it's just going to be the odd disenchant, so I need to watch out for that. And it didn't feel like there was particularly much he could do. And like when he activated his Jace in Game 1 and turns over his cards, and I'm like, I feel like giving you all of them, but I will put some effort in.
Separate them a little bit.
The games, basically, if I've drawn in any way poorly, the games have been close, but I've still won a lot of them. Like even when I've mulliganed to Fuller, because my opponent can do so little against my deck, I've just won anyway.
I'm very interested in your opinion on sort of likening the deck to something like a Tendril Storm deck or the Dredge deck. I mean, I don't know if you've played a lot of Dredge. I've played a little bit, and obviously our mutual friend Tom's played quite a lot. Would you describe the Game 1s in a similar way? Do they go in a similar way to the Game 1 Dredge games?
In some ways, the deck is better than the Dredge deck because, well, it's better defensively than the Dredge deck. Like, I don't think there's very much that's better than the Dredge deck Game 1 for just going, actually you're dead and you've got nothing you can do. But the games where something doesn't go quite right, the deck's very good at going, well, I can actually put my shields up, and it turns out a 5/5 reach first striker is really good on defence.
I mean, I remember watching you playing against the Haunted Zoo deck, and you had an Umbred Spirit Mantled 1/1 on defence, and obviously no one can really attack through that. You just ate a Geist of Sin draft, and then you ate a Meddling Mage, and it all went really well.
And that's what I mean, and that's why the deck's really good, because like even when you do get the sort of ropey draws, you can, because so many of the decks are trying to attack with random big creatures, you go Spirit Mantle my guy, and then it's like, well, I'm just going to lose a creature every time I attack, and then eventually you go, oh, draw my Daybreak Coronet, Vigilance, Lifelink, bang, just get back at, like, the Robots player I played in round 2, I did very little for the first few turns, and then drew a guy, put an enchantment on it, put a Coronet on it, and because he's playing no removal, especially removal for a hexproof guy.
Turns out there's not a lot of spot removal that deals with hexproof creatures.
I just got straight back into the game. I dealt him no damage, I was down to 9, but then like because he had a vigilant first striking reach guy, his cranial plating suddenly didn't do anything and wasn't a threat, and I'm back up to 14, and then he's very quickly dead. And I'd done very little, and I'd had like quite a poor draw.
You've talked a little bit about having some subpar draws, and something a lot of people have raised throughout the day is the card Ledgewalker, Silhana Ledgewalker.
Yeah.
People talking about maybe playing more hexproof. I mean, Lone Wolf has been thrown around a little bit, but I'm not sure how serious that is. How have you found the threat speed? I mean, in particular, how have you found the core Spirit Dancer?
Bizarrely, I didn't draw it a lot in the early rounds, and because it didn't have hexproof, and a few of the early rounds I played against had removal, I was like, well, I'll take them out because they're the thing that's going to get targeted. So I still didn't draw them. And then the last few rounds I've drawn it, and it's just foolish the things it can do. As you go, turn 1, make my Bogle Blade Cover Scout. Turn 2, make the core Spirit Dancer. You've not killed it, untap, draw 3 cards, make my men massive, and then just go from there.
I mean, I tried to get out of a Chalice for 1 by just cycling all of my 1 mana enchantments to draw cards.
Yeah.
It nearly worked. The Chalice for 2 was a bit of a kicker.
Yeah, the Tron player played a Chalice for 1, and like I already had the Spirit Dancer down, so I was like, play the Ethereal Armour, it's countered, draw a card, get to a Spirit Mantle, play that, counter my Rancor, draw a card, get to a Daybreak Coronet, just win anyway.
Have you found that you win all of your games, or close to, because of Coronet, or are the rest of the enchantments good enough on their own?
You can just get there with enchantments, but you tend to need Ethereal Armour, Rancor or Coronet to end the game. Like, because it's all well good having your 4/4 protection from creatures guy, but that's still
Sometimes they can just race you.
Yeah.
I mean, would you say that the Spirit Dancer helps in that regard?
Definitely, because it just churns you through to get the...
Not only that though, but if you put an Umbra onto the Spirit Dancer, it's like putting a Rancor on, surely.
Yeah, like I said...
a bit more risky.
Bit more risky. Tediously, a lot of the removal is paths. There's lots of paths around, so it being a number isn't as good. But the fact that, yeah, like all your 1/1 enchantments give +3/+3, and your Rancors +4/+2, it just gets so big so quickly. Like the first time I drew it, he'd managed to wrath my board. I think he'd double Pyroclasmed against the Tron player, and then I followed up with that, and then the turn after I put 3 enchantments on it, and it was 13 powered.
I finished a few of my matches in 5 to 15 minutes just by making turn 2 Spirit Dancer.
Yeah.
Do you think that the deck maybe wants the 4th? I mean, I know we cut it for the 4th Path to Exile this morning. Do you think that was correct?
The Path to Exiles, for me personally, have been really good.
They've been fantastic for me as well, every time I've drawn it.
Because it's really good for getting rid of all the leaves play guys, like your Kitchen Finks and your Worm Coil Engine and things like that.
Persists.
It's also very good for getting rid of spells guys.
Yeah, I mean, I've run into a fair few spells guys. I mean, I think that's because people expect a lot of Twin. I mean, have you seen much Twin today at all?
No.
I don't think
Even on the tables around.
I don't think I've seen a single... I think I've heard of one person asking for Kiki-Jikis, but I don't think I've seen a person playing Splinter Twin.
All the people I've heard playing Kiki-Jikis and the like have been pod players and not Twin players.
You played pod at all today?
It's a deck I've not played against yet.
Yeah, same. I don't think it's very popular in the UK.
I think it's a bit more difficult to play than people realise, and then when they test with it, they're like, actually, I'm not doing this right.
I remember trying to play it at the shop hungover, and it just didn't go very well at all.
And people then just go, tell you what, I'll play Jund. Jund's just a collection of good cards and lands to cast them.
Do you remember all the matches today? Can you tell me what you've played against?
Yes, I played against 5 Colour Zoo, then I played against Robots, Affinity, then I played against Martyr, then I played against Jund, then I played against Red, Green, Tron, then I played against Jund, and I've just played against Blue, White.
So you played against Jund a few times.
Twice, and then...
What would you say your hardest matchup, not your hardest match necessarily, but your hardest matchup was of the day?
The Martyr deck was the hardest match, because you really need a Spirit Mantle early, because they can just put a bunch of men out. They get a Squadron Hawk, and you've only got they've got the Crusades, they've got the Squadron Hawk, so unless you have the Reach Umbra, you just don't interact with them, and they can gain a bunch of life off the Soul Wardens to just stay out of your reach, sort of thing.
What would you say the easiest matchups you've had today have been?
The Robots match seemed really easy because he isn't even trying to kill my men, so when I do make them, it's like I can.
They may as well just be Lanor elves with no ability.
There's been a couple of times where one of my Dryad Arbors has had to be the monster that I've been equipping, enchanting, and against Robots it was fine. Whereas against the Blue-White guy, because I didn't know what he was doing...
Too much of a liability.
Well, I still did it, but he was make the Dryad Arbor, and I was like, well, I can put a Rancor on it, because if he kills it, I still get the Rancor back. And then his next play was to go, play a Ghost Quarter, and I'm like, oh, that's a bit of a pain. And then he went, Spreading Seas your Dryad Arbor, so I'm like, all right, so you've got all the answers to it. But luckily I drew a guy and managed to get out of it.
Would you say that the meta game here is particularly soft to the deck, or do you think you've maybe got a bit lucky with your matchup?
From looking at the decks around me and what my friends have played and things like that, it just seems like a lot of people are just quite cool to the deck. Not totally, everybody's got a little bit of something, but it's the type of deck where you realistically need quite a bit of something or very specific somethings to beat it.
I think you're definitely right in that road. I know that the people from our local playgroup come in. I don't think anyone's really playing a deck that we would consider a bad matchup for the deck that we're playing.
Yeah, the bad matchups seem to be Storm, Twin, basically the combo decks that aren't trying to interact with you anyway, but the ones that are going, I want to beat you up with creatures and maybe burn you a bit, you're just yeah, that's fine, because you can't kill my creatures and I'll gain a bunch of life. And
something I've definitely found today is that matchups like the Red Green Tron they were talking about and Scape Shift, it seems like the matchup's going to be really bad because they're going to throw a haymaker and just kill you, but what actually ends up happening is you just end up racing.
Yeah, I thought, like I said, I thought the Red Green Tron matchup was going to be really bad, as he'd be going Worm Coil Engines and Karns and things like that, but it turns out you just go, well, I'll make a Vigilant Protection from Creatures guy and it doesn't really matter what you're doing. And he didn't, my opponent didn't realise, he's attack with my Worm Coil because your guy's 7-5, and I'm block. He's all right, I gain 6. I'm well, no, my guy's got first strike, and he's all right. So I never actually gain any life.
I think there's a lot of misplays being made against the deck, which obviously gives you a lot of value.
It's one of the reasons we played it.
Definitely. Now we've talked about sort of main decks, misplays, and main boards, matchups. Let's talk about sideboards and strategy. Let's talk a bit about your sideboard and my sideboard first of all, and then we'll move on to other people's and what they've been bringing in. Have you found you've been sideboarding in a lot of cards in matchups, or not very many?
I think on average I sideboard 3 to 5 is the most I've seen, but the deck, like I said, I've not played against any of the decks that the sideboard's really set up against because they've not been the bad matchups. So I've just been tinkering a little bit and sort of fixing what I perceive might be gaps. When you bring in Leyline of Sanctity against the Jund matchup and the 5 Colour Zoo matchup, that's the time you're bringing in the most cards, because you bring 4 in because you want to see one. And
what would you say your best sideboard card has been of the day? talk about best and then maybe most used as well, if they're different.
Suppression field has probably been my best one.
Really? I mean, that's very interesting because the suppression field slot was one that we thought about and worked quite hard on, in that we weren't sure about Stony Silence's perhaps damping matrix. Has it...
No,
Are we done?
we can continue if you wish.
Will you sit? We can do this.
Fucking blue white, baby. Like another 9 laps on it.
I can talk about Magic quite a lot.
Yeah, I kind of. I thought you were pitching for it. The way he's going at it is like pitching for a job.
I don't need a job yet. I've got a little bit more uni. Lots of. We talked about this a lot. We worked really hard on this in your today.
Yes, we did. We worked.
Someone's like, have you guys? Brad was. Brad was asking. In round 6. Yeah, we good? Yeah. Where were we? Sideboards. Yeah, suppression field. I mean, we were talking about that a lot, whether it should be, like I was saying, Stony Silence, Damping Matrix. Has specifically suppression field been good in that it's been good in a variety of matchups, or would those cards have been perhaps better?
One of the things I brought in for is planeswalkers and things like that, and just trying to slow people's development down with fetch lands and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I saw you boarding it in the last round against the blue-white deck, and it seemed like it would be very good against things like his colonnades